Hello, everybody. So today we've got our panel. Really delighted to be here, and I hope you've all had a really good morning so far. I'm really excited to be part of this panel because I'm not only the solutions director at People Plus, but I happen to run a very small VCSE in the Southwest, a disability charity. So this is something that's very dear to my heart. I know just what an amazing job that community organisations do, and often how hard they have to kind of fight, often for kind of very survival, but they're really critical, trusted organisations. So I'm really delighted today. We've got some amazing people on the panel. We've got Victoria Blakeman, Richard Carroll, and Yeshua. I'm really sorry, Yeshua, I pronounced that hopefully.
You said it perfectly.
And Yeshua Carter. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hand over to each of them to introduce themselves, because they will do a much better job than I will. So over to you, Victoria, if you're happy just to introduce yourself and just talk us through a little bit about your perspective on the kind of title of it, which is lived experiences and learnings to deliver social values. So kind of what we're looking at is the role of VCSEs in delivering and meeting the needs of the community. Over to you, Victoria.
Good morning, Emma. Hello, everybody. As Emma said, thank you for that introduction. I'm Victoria Blakeman. I'm the Chief Exec of Recycling Lives, soon to be renamed, but I can't give you the new name because it's just not been agreed on the logo yet. But very proud and pleased to be here today, because we are an organisation that is steeped in lived experience and social value. Our work started 18 years ago. We're actually coming of age this year, so becoming an adult, hence our change of name as we move into new areas of work. We started out of the scrap metal business, hence the recycling. And we use recycling of scrap metal as a way of helping offenders at the time to be able to change their lives, train and go out into the world of work where they were fully supported. Last year, through our rehabilitation programmes alone, we generated £27 million worth of social value, which is a huge amount of social value that we put back into the economy locally where we are in Lancashire, but also around the country as well. We are very much a lived experience organisation. 33% of my staff, paid staff, are lived experience, have come through various of our programmes, whether it's our rehabilitation programme, our food programme, or whether they've just turned up at our door needing some help regarding accommodation. So we're taking people from all over the country, men, women and young people as it stands at the moment. The youngest people we work with currently are 18, although this will move to 14. And we provide opportunities for them to move on with their lives in some form. But by doing that, we are obviously saving the taxpayer and local councils and the services a considerable amount of money, because we actually do all of that work for them. In terms of some of our little bit here, it's really interesting. We talk about procurement. Very little of the procurement that we engage with is interested in what we've got to contribute. There's lots of opportunities for people with lived experience to get involved in things. My team were at a lived experience conference this week with the MOJ, and people are just about starting to recognise the value of those voices. But when it comes to actual procurement, I think there's a lot of lip service paid to that currently. People want us in their bids when they're bidding for work based on a tick box exercise. They're not interested in the value that we can bring and can help in the main. That is starting to change. We are engaging with a number of large organisations. One of my guys was speaking at a big construction conference yesterday. He did 25 years in prison. served a very long sentence, had a very chaotic life. I was going to say he's an older gentleman, but I don't think he'd thank me for that. Probably similar to me in age, actually. But, you know, he's lived a life, and now this guy is giving back in abundance in terms of the lives that he has changed. And people like listening to the stories we find. They really engage with us and our people, and they pay a lot of lip service to it, but when it actually comes to procurement, we're a box ticker for people.
Yeah.
They engage with the stories, but then after that, it's like, okay, we'll use you in our bid, and we really want to work with you in the future. And that's where it stops. And we do an awful lot of hard work to engage with these organisations, to show them the difference that we can make to them, to change people's minds about people with lived experience. Because as I say, the people that we work with, they come from a vast array of backgrounds. You know, not all offenders. Some have been homeless, some have had massive traumas that most people can't even begin to imagine, yet they're still turning up every day. And they've got stories to tell and difference to make, yet we really struggle. You know, if it wasn't for What Impact, you know, we've worked with a couple of organisations recently where they've won bids and tenders. Well, these are small bids and tenders where they see the value of my people being able to go out and deliver these programmes. So I think for me, I think this whole procurement piece is really difficult for smaller charities and voluntary sectors to actually fully engage with, because we don't have the infrastructure. People like us, they want to engage, they want to be seen to be doing good, but when it turns down to it, they're not really that interested.
Brilliant. Yeah, that's a common theme we hear, actually. I'm going to actually hand over and slightly rejig my order now, just to hand over actually to Richard Carroll, who is at Durham County Council, because I know, Richard, you do a ton of really great stuff in terms of local procurement. So just wondering if when you kind of give your top line thoughts, you could have a think about that piece around the value of lived experiences and how local authorities can do things differently.
It is, and hopefully I can bring a bit of, let's say, truth to the discussion in terms of what local authorities are trying to do. It is, Victoria, you've explained this, some really kind of, I don't want to say disappointing, but kind of frustrating kind of, you know, positions that Recycling Lives are in terms of that. You see it as that transactional piece, as a tick box piece, and you know, we're stepping away from that at Durham, and hopefully some of the things I'll talk about gives everyone that, let's say, confidence and aspiration that there's different ways to do things and having that impact. So I'll do my intro and I'll touch on a few bits, and I'm sure we'll get a good conversation going in time.
Thanks, Richard.
So yeah, morning everybody. Great sessions already this morning. I think some really, you know, key takeaways, I think, from some of the earlier sessions, and most recently from Darren's sessions earlier. I definitely don't have a poem, so we're not going to start with that. But I'm Richard Carroll, and I am the current head of procurement, sales and business services at Durham County Council. And hopefully you've heard of Durham Council in that social value space, particularly what we do on a national level, but also on that regional level, but very much on that local level and how we impact in Durham. So I'm going to try to give a little bit of that public sector, local authority flavour that shows that particularly any of those LAs or people going through LGR at the moment, or public bodies really, how we feel that there's certainly now a change in the mindset of social value, that it's not a bolt-on, and it can't be a transactional piece, and it can't be a tick box exercise. It's definitely got to become more sustainable. We need to achieve those better kind of long-term outcomes for kind of people and place. They're the real kind of bits that we need to integrate in, and we can do that through some of the public sector anchors, but importantly, it needs to be done through the collaboration with those VCSE partners that live and operate within our kind of boundaries as well, and within our regions, within our localities. So that collaboration engagement is massive. And I think now procurement is seen as a massive lever, and we have that. And I'll always kind of fight for procurement, for being at that top table. It's things that other speakers have talked about. Procurement needs to have that strategic influence in an organization, because we know what we can collaborate together on, and we can use our third party external kind of spend, but also our internal corporate delivery piece to really drive forward what we need to do that Victoria's touched on there. It needs to be designed intentionally and sustainably. It can't just be one-offs. So it has to be built into the process, and you've got to create that framework and that infrastructure to enable long-term impactful delivery of that.
Yeah.
They've been helped a little bit with the Procurement Act 23. I would say if you're new to the game and you've never done this before, then quite possibly. The Social Value Act 2012 was okay. It got the conversation on the table, and for us at Durham, it definitely helped us start that journey. I don't think the Procurement Act's done enough, I'll be honest with you, but at least it has gone from to consider social value under the Social Value Act. So should I put social value into procurement? Yes. I've met my legal obligation. That's not good enough. The Procurement Act at least takes us into to have regard to wording, which means that you've really got to think about it a bit more. But for me, it definitely comes down to the leadership, building that culture that social value is not, like Victoria alludes to, it's not an add-on, it's not a tick box. It's infrastructurally built into the procurement process. So, and then that enables you to start that collaborative piece around engagement with the local community, because it's the local community that's going to really on the ground deliver what's going to be enabled by the procurement piece that I can do from a local authority perspective.
Perfect.
I'm sure we'll get onto it in piece, but I'd love to shout out the County Durham Pound project that we do in Durham. Absolute.
We'll definitely move on to
this.
We'll definitely
check us out on LinkedIn and the website. But the County Durham Pound we'll talk about a bit later. But that is proving a real kind of important piece of our armory in Durham, and how we're going to
perfect
kind of grow that in the next 3 years. Thanks, Emma.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for that, Richard. That's really great. So Yeshua, last but not least, I think that's quite a nice segue actually from what Richard was talking about, because actually employers do have a really kind of critical role, and I think what you've done at EY Outreach is you've kind of brought that in really to kind of scale up your regional impact. And I know that you're kind of a founder of that, so it'd be good to kind of get your perspective as well.
Okay, I'll give some context before I jump into that. Hello everyone, welcome to the call. My name is Yeshua Carter. I'm coming to you with a duality of two different hats. I, by trade, work as a consultant within EY, but for the past few years, I actually was working full-time on a social value service that I set up within EY called EY Outreach, which actually kick-started in 2018. As an apprentice, when I came into the business before the tender age of 20 years old, I was actually 19, turning 20, and I actually recognized the necessity of bringing lived experience into a space that traditionally would kind of create a dichotomy between lived experience and commerciality. What I mean by that is I had an opportunity to set up a service that supports young people away from the school to prison pipeline, which was inspired by a stabbing that took place around the corner of the EY Birmingham location. And in that moment, I was having a conversation with a colleague, and while she was, shocked, flustered, and essentially just perturbed at what was taking place within the vicinity of the EY office, I myself was conversely looking at her like deadpan, no response. And I realized that actually I was desensitized to criminality. I was desensitized to
Interesting.
knife crime. I was desensitized to social disorganization because of my own personal lived experience. EY didn't know that any time I would exit the revolving doors of EY, I would be going back to a very marginalized community. I come from an area called Smethwick, and for those who know about Smethwick, there's a lot of criminality that was taking place at that time, gangs, etc. And in that moment, I said to myself, Yeshua, if EY's slogan at the time is building a better working world, how come the very communities that that kind of that are around us are not understanding what that better looks like? So I decided to set up EY Outreach. I co-founded it with another apprentice at the time to understand how we can bridge the gap between the corporate space and the communities. And I wanted to do that leveraging my lived experience and the power of creativity to teach young people who may not traditionally get into corporate organizations how they can utilize their transferable skills in maybe illegitimate means, how they can bring that into the working world. So just to keep it really brief, we did a one-day workshop in 2019 for the first of its kind. We recognize the power of learning from local authorities and policing teams. So we collaborated with West Midlands Police. We collaborated with the Lord Mayor of Birmingham and said, how can we support you? How can we use some of our corporate expertise to support you? And we did a one-day initiative to support a pupil referral unit. And just to conclude here, off the back of that one-day initiative, EY recognized that it's brilliant that we've got things like corporate social responsibility, but how do we take it from being on the periphery of what we do to the center of what we do? And I was able to work with the local public sector team within EY, led by Neil Sotario, who said, Jesh, we're going to put you on EY Outreach full time, supported by Michael Cook, who granted me a role to really build and bolster EY Outreach. And we was able to take it from that one-day initiative to now a national social value service, which has supported over 300 young people. We've reinvested over £250,000 worth of social value back into our local communities through early intervention, resettlement and rehabilitation, and paid work experience opportunities. And now to finish here, for the first time in EY UK and our history, we're spinning it out of the firm to become an associated entity and a charity that I will become the chief exec of. So that's a bit of how lived experience really influences change.
Amazing. I mean, that's just a really incredible story. And it shouldn't be. It should be kind of part and parcel of how we do things, really, shouldn't it? I'm wondering, Yeshua, if I can kind of kickstart really with your perspective on just what were the things that you found difficult to really kind of bring that to life when you were talking to, other third sector partners, other perhaps kind of county councils. What are the things you found difficult, and what did you, how did you make it work, I think is probably the question.
Yeah. Beautiful question. I think historically, when you look at corporate organizations like EY or organizations that don't usually do frontline community work, there's often this kind of idea that we're very detached and we don't have an understanding or competency of what's taking place within the community, which often proves true. So when I was having conversations with a lot of local authorities, they would always, or various different clients, they would say to me, yes, like, but how does EY support early intervention? How does EY support resettlement and rehabilitation? And I had to kind of demonstrate and paint the picture that there's loads of employees within corporate spaces who have come from lower socioeconomic backgrounds, who have come from various different backgrounds, where they can actually use their experience from the ground, but also their corporate experience to actually bring something together and deliver meaningful programs. And actually, off the back of that, we was able to demonstrate to local authorities that, yes, we are working with you to do operational things, but I also have connections back into the community where I can bring that operational excellence into the community and actually do meaningful work. We can actually, as I said earlier, build a bridge between communities and the corporate space. And that was able to convince them that actually there is something different here. We have a niche. So hopefully that answered that question.
Yeah, it does, definitely. I think we're struggling to hear you a little bit, Yeshua, is what I've just seen in the chat. So I don't know if we can but you're absolutely right about bridging, being that bridge. I wonder actually, coming back to Victoria, whether that's a kind of concept we can take and look at the kind of bridge between, I suppose, procurers like Richard and yours. What would you want to see to help, I suppose, create that bridge so that lived experience genuinely does inform and shape commissioning? I think, is there a change you would like to see?
I think for us, it's always us that are doing the shouting about ourselves. We're constantly inviting people in to come and see. We get out there, we do all the social media things. I think I think we have to get better at doing it. I think the onus is on us, and it's always on us, because they're big machines. There's lots going on, and we have to make sure that we put ourselves front and center. So I do think the onus is on us. I think we as organisation, my organisation particularly, we need to get better at communicating. I don't think we do enough locally to tell people what we're doing, but we're really good at the national piece.
Yes.
And I think that's it. And I think it's incumbent on us as organisations to be more collaborative locally, because we're stronger together. We're in the process of working with a number of organisations locally that we've never, in 18 years, we've never all got together and done everything. We all stay in our own lanes.
It's true.
Because we're protective of our little bit of money, or what it is that we do. And we need to stop being as protective, because actually we're stronger together, and we'll attract more funding and have a greater impact if we can take those shackles off. And be more collaborative. And I'd like to think that we're on the precipice of a new adventure in terms of our local area, in terms of doing that. But I do think being able to put people out into the community to actually spread that message. Our guys do an awful lot of work. We do a lot of work around the King's Trust trying to do prevention. We do supper clubs, so we feed homeless people, just so that we are seen as being that much more integrated and part of the community. But I also think it's nice when people from the procuring organisations actually spend the time to come out and take the invitations up that they get. We are all busy. Us guys, Yeshua and myself, literally my diary is chock-a-block back to front these days, but we manage to make time to go to their events. So, guys, sometimes come to see us. It's not hard. Sorry, Richard.
No, well, this is a beautiful segue actually into the work that Richard's doing on the Durham Pound, because when I heard it, I did think this was quite an innovative approach from a local authority, and there is an onus on VCSEs, as you say, perhaps to bridge those gaps and talk to other VCSEs. And it's difficult because you're all going for the same funding, but equally then that kind of local authority, how do you get your voice heard? And Richard, you found a way, because you must have hundreds of VCSEs coming to you.
Yeah, and it's challenging. I can understand all of those kind of issues and kind of challenges that Victoria and Yeshua have touched on there. And so that the County Durham Pound is a model that we've created in Durham, very much to kind of bring that collaborative piece together, to link that, or to create that bridge between the public sector anchors and then the VCSE anchors that exist within our communities. And we've created that framework where we can collectively support each other, importantly promote each other as well. Because like I say, not everything is going to be able to be delivered through the local authority or the housing association, but very much if we can create a platform to advertise and promote what some of our really important VCSE and kind of charitable sector organisations are doing, the benefits of that are going to be kind of double, trebled, quadrupled. So the County Durham Pound is a concept of an anchor network, but very much we started something kind of after COVID, and we initially started thinking about a procurement piece. Very quickly, you realise collaborative procurement is very difficult between different sectors within public sector. But the one thing we had in common was I wanted to have an impact in our communities in Durham. So we tagged on to social value and thought, right, what are we doing in that social value space? So we took the housing associations, we took the fire, the police, the local council, the big utilities kind of company that we have in Durham that's kind of borderline public sector. And we said, right, why don't, through a local needs analysis, by working with the community, let's understand what actually is going to generate the biggest impact in Durham if we all started directing our procurement levers in the same way. And then the community kind of, and the VCSE community, and even the private sector kicked back and went, actually, that's quite a really strong idea, because it means that we know what you want and we're allowed to provide it. And also, as part of that, you're giving us the framework of organizations that exist in the community that we can then tap into to help us deliver some of the things that you're telling us that Durham needs. So that was the initial concept, and it's just grown arms and legs in the last 3 years, very deliberately, because we generate the case studies, we do videos that lands as a media, that lands really well. We're active on LinkedIn, we have our own website, which I've put in the chat. Have a look at some of the stuff we do. It's all around collaboration. It's all around, if we're all targeted what we need in Durham by working with the VCSE organisations that exist in that, hence the fact we had to create a supporters charter, because the demand was so much from the partners. We had to bring in the private and the VCSE sectors to start to take some of this load off us. That then starts to generate momentum. It generates interest. And what that does is it allows us nationally now to platform some of our local VCSE organisations and the great work that they're doing. Now, publicity around that just generates interest in them. So again, Victoria, absolutely, we need to come out and understand what you're doing. We then need to understand where you fit within the programme of activities that we can align you to. So when people are bidding for my contracts at the council, I've created an infrastructure of programs through the VCSE community that are be sustainable. And maybe it's that private sector company that's going to come in and do a job that's going to feed in and do a little bit. But because it's always replenished with a new provider every time, you get that consistency and sustainability through the VCSE delivery program. That's the next big stage, is how do we map that out? Where are the gaps in terms of what we need? What are the key pieces? So again, at Durham, we've just announced the protected characteristics of care levers as a really vital thing for our local authority. And I'm starting to build that into some of our social value requirements too. So it can be done. I think there's models to do there. It's got to be a group of the willing. You've got to get the right people in, and you've got to make sure the leadership buy into this. And I tell you what, and you need people that absolutely shout about it and fight for everyone around this. And that's the way you do it. And I think publicising everything that we do and make it look as if people aren't on the bus, you're going to lose out on this. Because if you're not on the train that we're going down that path, you're going to get left behind.
Yeah.
So get on board.
It's a really great way of coordinating it, because actually it can become quite amorphous, can't it? So that's a really great way of making sure you've plugged in the VCSEs where they need to be plugged in. I was just going to come back to Yeshua quickly, just to really kind of talk about your experience of working with the VCSEs and getting that lived experience. And I suppose, with your outreach hat, but also with your PY hat, have you found that easy, and have you kind of managed to do that in a systematic way? What could VCSEs do to make it easy to work with you, I guess, is probably the question.
Most definitely. I think, so to kind of give you some insight and context into what we do. So through EY Outreach, we support, our motto is disrupting the school to prison pipeline and transforming it to the school to prison pathway. We recognize that we don't have all the expertise nor skills to do that. So what we do is we provide frontline work, but any time that we're working with our clients from a place-based perspective, so say for example a local authority in Bristol wants to work with us, we would then go into that community and identify organizations who can support us with the delivery of our initiatives. We have off-the-shelf programs that we tailor to support each cohort's needs, because we recognize there's national statistics that can say something about a demographic of people, but when actually you go into the localities, there's different needs. So when we work with these young people, some of them might say, or the council might say, or the school might say, there's a massive mental health challenge, there's a massive knife crime issue. And oftentimes we as an organization or corporate don't have the expertise to deliver on that. So we would then identify an organization within that local place and invest in them to co-deliver alongside us. And that's worked really, really well. We've adopted this place-based approach where we have our social value budget, and we are able to help create sustainable opportunities for organizations by reinvesting back into them. So I think that's one of the key models that we do. But from a VCSE perspective, what I would encourage VCSEs to do is have conversations with the private sector organizations around them. Have conversations, because a lot of VCSEs that I've worked with don't necessarily recognize or have the language or the terminology to help or to understand how they can kind of lock in to support private sector. Can we have CSR support? Can we have funding support? Actually, your terminology is around, well, how can I support the model social value criteria award? This is how we do it. This is how we can tailor to it. It speaks and resonates a lot with professional service firms. So as well as supporting, just to conclude there, as well as supporting VCSEs by investing into them, we also work with them to teach them how to adapt the right vernacular to support professional service firms as well.
That's a nice point to end on. As I can see, Rick has just turned up to